Und da ich fachlich nur verlieren kann vor dem nächsten Keynote-Speaker, habe ich beschlossen, es jetzt einfach zu beenden von meiner Seite und überzuleiten zu unserem Hauptredner des heutigen Tages, den ich nicht ankündigen muss. Jeder, der in Security arbeitet, kennt ihn, glaube ich, seit ein paar Jahren. Ich glaube, ein Querdenker der ersten Stunde. Aber heute sind wir mit dem Thema Digitalisierung unterwegs, mit IoT und anderen Themen. Und deshalb interessiert mich sehr, was ein Vordenker der ersten Stunde heute im Rahmen der digitalen Transformation für Ideen und Anregungen für uns als Security-Experten in Deutschland hat, um hier etwas an seinen Strategien, Visionen, aber auch Empfehlungen, was er uns da mitgeben kann. Und deshalb möchte ich auf die Bühne bitten, Herrn Schneier, und ich wünsche uns allen einen schönen, erfolgreichen Tag heute. Bruce, your stage.
Good morning. I apologize, I will do this in English. I hope that was a nice introduction, I don't know. Thank you for having me. It is officially too warm here. I think it was like 30, was it 33 yesterday? So, is it always this hot here? Yeah. All right, so I now officially give you all permission to take your jackets off and roll up your sleeves and be comfortable. So I want to talk about what I think are some changes coming to our industry from the computerization of everything. Now there's a quote in 2011, Mark Andreessen, founder of Netscape. He wrote, I think it was in the Wall Street Journal, that software is eating the world. And what he meant was that everything is becoming computerized, and everything is becoming a computer. So your microwave oven is a computer that keeps things hot. Your refrigerator is a computer that keeps things cold. Or your smartphone is a computer that makes phone calls. An ATM machine is a computer with money inside. And your car used to be a mechanical device, then it was a mechanical device with some computers, and now it's a computer with 4 wheels and an engine. Or actually, more explicitly, it is a 100+ computer distributed system with 4 wheels and an engine. And this computerization of everything is happening at all levels of our lives. A nuclear power plant is just a computer that produces energy. And as everything turns into a computer, computer security becomes everything security. And this has two, I think, really important implications. One is that the knowledge that we all have about computer security becomes applicable to everything. And two, all the restrictions and regulations from the real world, from the world of safety, become applied into our world. And the beachhead of this, we're seeing this happening, is the Internet of Things. Now, the Internet of Things is a buzzword, it's an industry name, but I think it represents something very important. Now, when I think of the Internet of Things, I think of it in terms of 3 parts. So there are the sensors that collect data on us and our environment. So smartphone location data, or smart thermostat temperature data, or smart light bulb proximity data, right? Internet-enabled street sensors, highway sensors. You've read about smart cities. And so they're the sensors, that's the first part. The second are the processing that figures out what the data means and what to do about it. So this includes both processors and memory. And a lot of this happens in the cloud. So it's interesting that if you buy a Samsung smart television, one of the things it does is it senses voice and listens for voice commands. It doesn't do that voice-to-text translation on the television. It sends the raw voice up to the cloud where it's processed and the commands are sent back down. In some ways that's surprising. Moore's law says CPUs are getting faster and more powerful. Why isn't it done on the television? It's not. So that's the second part, the sort of smarts. And the third part are the actuators that affect our environment. I mean, I have a smart thermostat at home, and the point of it is to set the temperature on my furnace and on my air conditioner. Or you think of driverless cars, with lots of sensors, lots of smarts. The point will be to make turn decisions and braking decisions. So you can think of the sensors as the eyes and ears of the internet. We're giving the internet eyes and ears. We're giving it senses. You could think of the actuators as the hands and feet of the internet. We're enabling the internet to do stuff. And that third part, the part in the middle, as the brain. So the internet now senses, thinks, and acts. And if you read any science fiction, that is pretty much the textbook definition of a robot. Something that senses, thinks, and acts. And the way to think of the internet now is that we are building a world-sized robot, and we don't even realize it. Now, this isn't a robot in the classical sense. Right? We think of robots as discrete autonomous entities. Right? They're housed in some metal shell. The smarts are on the inside. The sensors and actuators are on the surface. They'll think of, I don't know, Data from Star Trek or any of the Star Wars robots. That's a robot that we're used to. This is different. It's a distributed robot. It doesn't have a central brain. Parts of it are controlled by different people. It doesn't have a singular goal or singular focus. The sensors and actuators might not be housed in the same place. And weirdly, it's not something we're deliberately designing. Right? This is an emergent property of the internet we're building. But it's still smart things that act on the world in a direct physical manner. And it's getting more powerful the more interconnections we're building. And this is what's eating the world. And it means that internet security becomes everything security. And so all the lessons for our world become applicable everywhere. So things about security and complexity, or vulnerabilities and patching, or attacks and incident response. And you'll see some of this in the news reporting about the Mirai botnet or WannaCry, or different computer things that are having real-world effects. And that's the critical difference. The effects are greater. As software eats the world, the effects of software become much more pronounced. So we're already reading about decision-making algorithms that have vital and lasting effects. So I don't know about Europe and the United States. We have predictive policing algorithms. We have algorithms that determine who gets loans, who gets into college, who gets government services. Algorithms determine who gets released from jail, and what kind of treatment people get in the hospitals. Automatic debt collection, cars that repossess themselves. Right, there's a lot of vertical integration, and this really threatens the openness and accessibility of the internet. We're seeing a lot of centralization, a lot of monopolies. We can have a whole conversation about sensors and how they erode privacy. And the notion of ubiquitous surveillance is here. Devices like Siri and Alexa are always on, always listening. And all of this has the potential to deepen social inequities, reinforce social divides, and have a profound influence on our society. And that's just so general. Specific to our field, the immediate security threats are a lot greater, because cyber-physical systems have real-world consequences. Right, so you know about the CIA triad. We normally think of security in terms of three things: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Right, that's true, but for most of our careers, confidentiality has been what matters. Data privacy. How do I keep data in my network? How do I keep unauthorized people from accessing it? How do I protect the data? But when you start getting into physical systems, the integrity and availability threats are much worse than the confidentiality threats. And information manipulation is an increasing threat as systems become capable and autonomous. In the United States, both James Clapper, our former Director of National Intelligence, and Mike Rogers, our current NSA Director, have testified about this as an increasing threat. I think of WannaCry. One of the effects of that was that systems in the UK, hospitals, had to turn away patients. WannaCry is an availability attack. It is not a confidentiality attack. It renders your data inaccessible. And denial of service is an increasing threat. Right? That's the Mirai botnet. That was also an availability attack. We are seeing Russian disinformation campaigns. That's an integrity attack. Right? So this kind of data manipulation is increasingly important. Right? Denial of service, that hacking, as these systems have implications for life and property. We saw this, a little bit in SCADA systems, with those legacy systems controlling power plants and chemical plants, but now it's entering mainstream. Confidentiality is still a problem, as we see about all the data thefts and data leakages everywhere. So there's sort of other issues. It's in some ways surprising, but our smartphone is emerging as a centralized control device of the Internet of Things. If you have an IoT device, pretty much guaranteed you're controlling it from your phone. If you have an account somewhere, it's probably controlled from your phone. You have two-factor authentication, it likely goes through your phone. And this is turning into a security hub with all the pluses and minuses the single point of failure brings. Lose this, and you have real problems. I use Lyft a lot, Uber and Lyft, the car services. They're not here, but they're in a lot of places. They have a whole system for which if you leave something in the car, how you recover it. And the system works via the app. I have no idea how to recover your phone if you leave it in the car. And then notions, that we're used to, class breaks, become even more serious in these systems. And full disclosure has a very different conversation when you're talking about, airplane avionics. It's same computers, different outcomes. There's a fundamental difference between your computer crashes and you lose your spreadsheet data, and your pacemaker crashes and you lose your life. It could be the same CPU, the same operating system, the same software, the same vulnerability. But because of the physical nature of the second system, the effects are much greater. This is important. So I have 5 truisms about security on the internet that I assume to be true everywhere. And these are things I think we know, but we really haven't looked at the ramifications. First, most software is poorly written and insecure. You know this. Software is lousy. Generally because the market doesn't want to pay for quality software. The joke is good, fast, cheap, pick any two. We have chosen fast and cheap over good. We do it again and again. And poor software is full of bugs. Some bugs are security vulnerabilities. And this was okay when it didn't matter. So your computer crashes, so your browser crashes, so your phone crashes, you just reboot. It was easy because it didn't matter. Poor quality software we are all used to, and we basically don't care. That's going to change. Second truism. The extensibility of computerized systems means that everything can be used against us. And this is a key difference between a computerized system and a non-computerized system. And that is the functionality of a computerized system cannot be constrained. If you remember a telephone from 20 years ago, that device, that big clunky thing on your desk, was a telephone, and it could never be anything other than a telephone. Right? Because the telephonist was built in to it when it was constructed. This is a telephone, but it can also be whatever you want it to be because it has software. About 3 weeks ago, I read that someone converted their internet thermostat to play the computer game Doom. Right? You laugh, but you're not surprised. Of course you could do that. Right? It's a computer. It can do whatever you want. The mechanical thermostat it replaced cannot do that, can never do that. No matter how hard you try, you cannot make a mechanical device play the game Doom. With a computer device, it's just hacking. And so this has sort of two implications. One is that these continuously evolving systems are hard to secure because designers can't anticipate every combination of and condition and functionality. Right? Apple can't predict what apps will be written. Right? And every computer can be upgraded with additional features, either on purpose or maliciously. In a real sense, malware is an upgrade of additional features onto your computer without your knowledge or consent. That's the way it works, which can't happen for a mechanical device. All right, the third truism. The complexity of computerized systems results in all sorts of new insecurities. And I can sort of spend an hour on this, but this is true. Complexity is the worst enemy of security for a whole lot of reasons. Right? There's sort of the position of the interior reason. Right? The defender has to defend the entire attack surface. The attacker has to find just one way in. And computers have a huge attack surface. There's the interconnections. There's all sorts of things. But basically, attack is easier than defense. We all know this. It has been true in our field since forever, and is about to be true everywhere. And this means that security testing is hard. Too many options, too many configurations, too many interactions. Again, we all know this. But in the real world, testing is relatively easy. You want to test if, children's pajamas are flammable, you try to burn them. Right? And if you can, you prohibit them from being sold. Those kind of simple tests, which are done by government regulators everywhere on all sorts of consumer products, don't scale to computerized products. Because there's just too much complexity. You can't test it in the same way. And this leads to the fourth truism. There are new vulnerabilities in the interconnections. As we connect things to each other, the more vulnerabilities in one thing affect something else. Now, remember the Mirai botnet? That was a vulnerability in DVRs and CCTV cameras that allowed hackers to launch a massive DDoS attack against a name server, which caused a bunch of popular websites to go offline. Or the Target attack, the US retailer. So there was a vulnerability in the air conditioning contractor for a few Target stores in Pennsylvania that allowed hackers to get into the corporate network and then steal all those credentials. And this happens again and again. And vulnerabilities like these can be hard to fix because no one system might be at fault. We have had instances where two individually secure systems come together and an insecurity results, with pretty much no one to blame but the interaction. Right, so last trend. Computers are differently vulnerable. The internet isn't powering. The internet allows things to scale. That's why it's so great. That's why everybody we know uses it. That's why everybody we work for uses it. But it also allows attacks to scale. Internet attacks can scale in degrees impossible without computers and networks, in speed, scale, and scope. And what this means is fewer attackers can do more damage because of better technology. We all know this. We're not worried about the average attacker. We're worried about the best attacker. I mean, I live in Minneapolis. If there's a great burglar here in Frankfurt, he's not going to fly to Minneapolis to rob my house. He's just not. But if it was a great computer attacker, I would be worried about our skill. Because the internet doesn't have that sort of distance attenuation the way real-world systems do. And fewer attackers can do more damage because of better technology. And this is the notion of class breaks. We are used to that, the world is not. Now, we're used to waking up one day and being told that all Windows 7 systems are vulnerable, we now must fix them. Right? In a way that real-world systems don't have that problem. The car manufacturers know how cars break. Cars have parts have mean time between failures, you do the math, you figure out how many cars on average will break a day, and you can set up your supply chain to deal with that. Add computers, and they fail differently. Right? All the cars work great until one day when none of them do. That is a different sort of failure, and it is not one that the real world is used to. And this trend becomes more dangerous as these systems become more critical. Because remember, we're building this robot that affects the entire world. So we have to worry about things like someone crashing all the cars or shutting down all the power plants. And again, it's not the security of the average. It's the security of the smartest guy who can ruin it for everybody. And again, we know this. The person who wrote the Mirai botnet put the code online. Right? He did the work, and now there are like 3 or 4 Mirai botnet variants showing up per day. Right? That's going to happen more and more. So there are more, but so those 5 things I think are the most important things that we know about computer network security that are soon going to be problems everywhere. Now, securing the IoT is a really hard technical problem. And a lot of people are working on details of different technologies, companies, universities. And we see work in secure IoT building blocks, like how we make the fundamental units more secure, or security systems that assume there will be malicious nodes on the network. Right? Because our networks will have these things coming in sort of, through side doors. Or ways to limit catastrophic effects of vulnerabilities. My guess is we're not going to solve this anytime soon, and that we're just going to muddle through with various technologies, really like we have been with computers and networks the past bunch of decades. In the near term, I see many attempts to come up with a list of things IoT vendors should be doing. I did a survey of this a few months ago on my blog, and I came up with about 20 different IoT security guidelines from various organizations. And you look at them all, and they're all kind of about the same. They include things like, we should have good security practices, like testing, patching, avoiding known vulnerabilities, having secure defaults, not using default passwords. Rules about data minimization, data protection, data accessibility, support for sensible security research, some sort of offline fail-safe functionality, and a sort of a Faraday mode where the device still works, the internet doesn't. And you don't want an internet-enabled refrigerator that stops keeping your food cold if it loses the internet connection. Right? So those sorts of things. interoperability requirements, data portability requirements. And different organizations have different takes on these. And if you're interested, I urge you to look at the blog post. You can see and print out, and it's a stack this high, of different security guidelines documents. I mean, they're all great lists. Right now, they're all voluntary. And we have to figure out how to get them adopted, or whether you want to standardize, how we standardize, differences across industries. I mean, until now, we've largely left computer security to the market. I mean, government regulation has been very minimal. I mean, better in in Europe than the United States, but still pretty minimal. And the incentives have worked out, only okay. But there are lots of externalities, lots of interdependencies, lots of collective action problems that markets sort of inherently can't solve. And we have been okay with this because the effects of failure just weren't that great. It just didn't matter. And that's what's changing. And I think that's going to spur government involvement. And the economics of the Internet of Things is different. And this is important for us to realize. So our computers and our phones, right, these devices, this device, they're as secure as they are for two basic reasons. One is there's a security team at Microsoft, Apple, and Google that do their best to design these things properly and securely the first time. And two, those same teams are able to quickly and effectively deliver security patches when problems arise. Right? And we're used to that. We get security patches all the time. This ecosystem of design and patching isn't true for low-cost embedded systems like digital video recorders and home routers. These devices are built at a lower profit margin. They're often built offshore and by third parties. I mean, the company who sells them to you just slaps a label on them and sells them. And there just aren't security teams associated with these devices. There's no one to write the patches. Even worse, many of the devices have no way to have their software and firmware patched. I mean, right now, the way you update your digital video recorder is you throw it away and buy a new one. And you laugh, but that's it. That's what we got. We do not have a patch mechanism. And we also get our security from the fact that we replace our computers and phones every few years. And there are some iPhones that Apple doesn't support anymore. There are versions of Windows that Microsoft doesn't support anymore. And this churn to the newer and more secure version means everything constantly improves. That's not the way cheap embedded systems work. Right? We replace our DVRs every 5 to 10 years. We replace our refrigerator every 25 years. I mean, I expect to replace my home thermostat approximately never. And our industry is not prepared for that. And so someone writing software today for an automobile, it'll probably get into a car in 2020. That car will be driven around Germany for, 10 years. Then it'll be put on a boat and shipped to Nairobi, where it'll be driven for another 25 years. We, as an industry, have no idea how to deal with 40-year-old software. We don't. And you can try it. Go find a 40-year-old computer, turn it on, see how you get it working. But IoT will force us to do that. It will not be okay for a car manufacturer to say, oh, we no longer support 5-year-old cars. Just buy a new one. Right? I mean, aside from the price, the carbon footprint will be ginormous. We're going to have to figure this out. In a lot of cases, the market's going to fail here because neither the buyer nor the seller care. Cars are sort of their own thing, but in a lot of the cheaper devices, the buyer just wants a device that works. And your webcam might be part of the Mirai botnet. You have no way of knowing, and if you think about it, you kind of don't care. As long as it works, you're happy. And that insecurity is largely an externality. It doesn't affect you, so why should you bother? And if you're not going to bother, you're not going to pay more for a more secure webcam, because it's really not your security, it's everyone else's security. Let them pay for it. Right? And that's where governments get in. And really, the market rarely fixes safety or security problems without government intervention. This is true, since the beginning. Right? It's been true for food safety and food security, automobile safety, airplane safety, product safety, financial institution safety. All of these require government intervention to fix. And this is all coming fast. Gartner estimated that we're adding about 2 billion devices to the internet every year. I'll see numbers of like 30 to 50 billion by 2020. I don't think that's the issue. We are actually really good at dealing with lots of devices. The real problem is going to be the number of different kinds of devices. And that's going to be in the millions. Millions of different types of devices attached to the internet. That's going to be the problem. Because we have no idea how to deal with that complexity. And a lot of it's going to be low-hanging fruit for attackers. Right? Entry points into larger systems, and some of it controlling highly critical systems. All right, make one more point, then I want to take questions. So in general, we have two basic paradigms of security. There's paradigm A, which is secure it well and properly the first time. This comes from the world of dangerous things. Planes, automobiles, medical devices, buildings. This is the world of regulations, codes, standards, certification, licensing, testing. And there's paradigm B, which is make sure your security is agile. And this comes from the fast-moving world of software. And it's rapid prototyping and rapid updates, survivability, recoverability, mitigation, adaptability. I mean, these two worlds are different. In a sense, it's a choice between doing things right and doing things quickly, or the cost of failure and the cost of fix. These two worlds are colliding. They're colliding in our cars, in our medical devices, building control systems, traffic control systems, voting machines. And we need to figure out how to combine these two paradigms as well. Really, we're not doing very well because they're very different, but we have to figure it out. And primarily, I think this is a policy problem. And my last statement to you is that policy is coming to our industry in a big way. Governments regulate things that can kill you. Software is turning into something that can kill you. We should expect heavy government regulation on our industry. Which means we should think about it, we should prepare for it, we should get ahead of it, or it's just not going to be good regulation. But that's the world we're moving into. So thank you. So I purposely left a bunch of time for questions. And here's someone with a phone.
Via the app. Just a second. So we've
There's an app.
There's an app.
So they know there's an app?
Yes. So there's one question from a gentleman called Andreas Schramm, which
It's
is
not anonymous. All right, now you know that.
what password manager, if any, do you use and why?
I use my own password manager. It's called Password Safe. I wrote it a whole bunch of years ago. You can get it off my website. And I use it because it's mine. I mean, of course, use a password manager. I think everyone should, because otherwise you're using your head, which is a really lousy password manager. And especially because I probably have 300 passwords in it, and these are all I use them all once a year or less. And if you use a password manager, you can generate random passwords that are impossible to remember, and the system remembers it for you, and you cut and paste. It works real well. A lot of issues. I don't like web-based password managers. I think there's an extra vulnerability there. So this is just on my computer. It means it's a little annoying because it's a little harder to move stuff from computer to computer. I think the benefit is in security. So that's what I use. There are a whole bunch out there.
Thank you, Bruce. Are there any other questions? I'm pretty sure there are. Weitere Fragen aus dem Publikum?
I think that means you can ask a question in German.
Bruce, you called for government regulations in order to prepare for the Internet of Things. To which extent do you think have the government authorities really understood the pregnance, the importance of this Internet of Things and the consequences out of that?
I think they're starting to. And I speak the United States best. The Federal Trade Commission is starting to look at this in a big way, and that's probably the best government group in the United States thinking about this. The state of California, some states are doing a good job. In Europe, there's some consumer protection agencies that I'm seeing looking at internet-enabled toys and other devices. There's still a lot of studying in the European Parliament about what sort of regulations and groups should do this. I think we need a new government agency. That you really can't expect the existing agencies to do this because the expertise isn't there. And if you think about the history of technology, new technologies cause new government agencies all the time. Cars did, trains did, radio did, airplanes did, nuclear power did. There's a government agency in the United States for each of those different technologies, and Europe's probably very similar. And I think whether it's robotics or autonomy or algorithms, there's going to be some need for a government agency, like in Brussels, that understands the technology in a deep way. Because I just don't see, at least in the United States, the agency regulates medical devices doing a very bad job with computerized medical devices. And the agency regulates cars is doing only a mediocre job with computerized cars. And I think we'll just need, they're all computers. The commonalities are much more than the differences. Already on this phone, I can talk to my car, monitor my health, change the temperature in my home. Yeah, that's 4 U.S. government regulatory agencies I crossed. And that's like it's still morning. So, we're going to need some kind of holistic regulatory process. And it's going to be hard. I think governments are starting to wake up to this. And I have more optimism for Europe leading the way than the US, for all sorts of reasons. So, that's where I am.
Thank you, Bruce. So there are more questions coming in via the app. From Matthias Brüning, 2 questions.
You only get 1 question.
Only 1?
All right, 1 at a time.
Okay, so that's how it goes first. Can we as an industry help before government kicks in, make DNS, SAC mandatory, etc.?
I think we as an industry can do a lot of things. And my fear is that there's going to be some disaster and the government will do something because something must be done. Right? The joke, something must be done, this is something, therefore we must do it. And you'll get, I think, some really bad regulation if it's written by not us, by not technologists. Unfortunately, the internet is basically designed by, California techno-libertarians that are very adverse to government regulation. And I think that will be our undoing if we stick to that. So, something like DNSSEC, there's all sorts of things we can do if we decide. They'll be expensive, they'll be annoying. And I'd rather we do it than have it done to us. So that particular thing I don't know, but there's a lot of stuff along those lines that we can do to make this all more secure. And I think it's incumbent on us to start thinking about them and as an industry doing them.
Oh, thank you. Second one. What do you make of the state of TLS SSL, man in the middle by security vendors? How do you think about it?
All right, these are deep questions, but okay. I kind of dislike the fact that we are, all man-in-the-middling our internet connections left and right, and it's the point where their entire industries are based on the fact that you can man-in-the-middle TLS connections. I mean, getting internet in this hotel involves man-in-the-middling DNS, so there are your DNSSEC issues, and that's just because that's the way we've hacked these systems together. I'd like it if we could fix that. It's going to be hard because it is so entrenched. Likely we have to abandon these as security measures and go elsewhere. But it would be great if we could stop doing these things. I don't think we can.
Thank you. More questions directly from the audience?
All right, we go bypassing the app.
Okay.
You just said the problem of software which is not patched is very, very huge, and you're expecting more regulation for our industry. If you think of the financial service industry, they are quite regulated as well, but what do you think about responsibility? And if you think of AIG and all the big banks in the US, if they did something which is not according to the regulation, and yeah, they were too big to fail. And if you think of Microsoft, Google, Apple, and if they take their responsibility, and if they are not able to, do you think that the responsibility will come to that point?
So let's sort of step back for a second and talk about government regulation in general. Governments have kind of a limited toolbox of things they can do to affect industries. So they can work ex ante, and that means before the fact. So you think about regulations on products and product categories, licensing of products or individuals, that doctors have to get licensed, testing requirements, best practices. These all would be ex ante regulations. There are ex post regulations, which is after the fact. So think of when you talk about liabilities. Liabilities when things go wrong would be an ex post regulation. Or fines for insecurity would be an ex post regulation. Right? So a lot of things we can do there. There are others. I'll just briefly mention them. There are disclosure regulations. So product labeling and transparency measures, or consumer ratings agencies, or forensic agencies like the ones that do forensics on airplane crashes. And the last is regulations in the environment. So funding for research and education, or using government procurement. So you're talking about a particular type of regulation. It's ex post and it's a liability. I'm a big fan of liability. I think liability regulations go a long way to clean up problems in our industry. And once you have liabilities, the insurance industry does step in and provides guidance and policies and sort of ways to standardize the risk. Yes, I think we have to worry about too big to fail arguments, but those are true even without computers. And I think there are bigger problems for society than that. But that's where you're going to see regulations. There'll probably be some mismatch of this. And here again, Europe is doing pretty well. I think the GDPR is going to make a huge difference. It has some really strong privacy and security requirements, and even stronger penalties. The question is going to be, how's it going to be enforced? And if it is enforced, I think that's going to make huge changes around the world. There's also this, I don't know the details, but I know manufactured goods in Europe have that CE mark on them. That basically means conforms to all applicable standards. Right? There is already an applicable standard for responsible vulnerability disclosure. And I know whatever organizations makes these are working on ones for secure defaults and for patch managements. Right? So that gets incorporated in products sold in Europe. It gets incorporated by treaties like GATT, in trade agreements, into products around the world. And the neat thing about software is that it's easier to write it once than to have different versions. So right now for automobiles, the car that is sold in the United States is different than the car that's sold in Mexico because the environmental requirements are different. And auto manufacturers make multiple versions of their cars to sell in different markets. For software, that's actually more expensive. You're better off writing one version of your software to sell everywhere at the most stringent security requirements. So Europe starts doing these things, and then companies like Apple make their iPhone more secure, and I in the US benefit, so I'm rooting for you guys. So that's sort of a meandering way to your question. I hope I answered it.
Thank you.
I think you already partially answered the question. You mentioned that if we leave it up to the government to define the regulation, we most probably get lousy regulation. What would be your criteria to measure whether regulation is good or bad, and how would good regulation from your point of view look like?
You know, I'm going to give you the dumb answer because the good answer takes too long. Good regulation does good, and bad regulation doesn't. I mean, this is hard. I mean, the devil's in the details, and we know a lot of regulations that have gone wrong. You know, and it's an iterative process. You know, things are put out there, and they slowly get better. Now, I want regulation that actually addresses the problem and doesn't only pretend to. In the United States, we have a lot of experience with regulation that doesn't actually do the job because it'd be written by the groups that are being regulated, that don't want to be regulated. And, you know, there's this belief that regulation will destroy innovation. I think that's largely untrue. And, you know, we see this every time regulation is brought up. It was brought up when they were trying to regulate restaurants and automobiles, and that it would just stifle innovation. It doesn't. It constrains it, and it constrains it in ways that we think are beneficial to society. So I think good regulation does that. It constrains the industry in ways that are beneficial to society. And that, you know, it's, you know, when I give this talk in the United States, which is very anti-regulation, one of the things I say is, you know, we're used to a choice between regulation and no regulation. That choice is over. Now it's a choice between smart government regulation and stupid government regulation. And so let's figure out what smart means. I think answering your question is the work we have to do. All right, so one last question.
One last question.
You have to go to the airport.
Okay.
You laugh, I actually have to go to the airport.
Yeah, I know. Just 1 minute left. So, very quick one. What's, from your experience, the biggest difference between American and European cybersecurity?
I think it really is the government involvement. In the United States, we tend to mistrust government and trust corporations. Europe tends to be the reverse. Europeans tend to trust government and mistrust corporations. And so the security environment, I think, reflects that difference. Now, I mean, it's not a difference in products and vulnerabilities, in the way networks are built, but it's sort of a philosophical difference in who we're trusting. And it's hard for us to realize this sometimes, but in all computer systems, you must trust somebody. You know, sort of by definition, you put an iPhone in your pocket, you must trust Apple. And you must trust the phone company. You must trust the app makers, because you're not verifying those pieces. And who you trust, who you don't trust, how you build your security, I think the Europe and the United States reflects that very core difference. You know, as bad as the NSA is, we have many more regulations constraining government surveillance than European countries do. Right? As bad as Facebook is, you have many more regulations constraining them than we in the United States do. All right.
All right.
Thank you. It's got to be a yes or no question.
questions for you, but can you ask one very, very last question?
All right.
So is blockchain a secure protocol and technique for the future?
Ooh. And amazingly, it actually is a yes or no question.
That's an easy one.
It's not an easy one, actually. Maybe.